The 2026 Women's Final Four is here. No surprises, all number one seeds, all four teams that were in last year's Final Four, but we still have a lot of good storylines in play, and we need to break down the matchups. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers. We're not going to mess around. Let's get right into it. Starting with the first matchup, a national championship game rematch from last year. The two premier programs in women's college basketball. We've got UConn and we've got South Carolina. I don't know if I'm ready for this one, okay? If you don't know, I'm a big South Carolina fan, huge South Carolina fan, born and raised in South Carolina, but also in my bracket, I picked UConn to win it all with good reason. They haven't lost in 54 games now. So the $1 million question, can South Carolina complete Revenge Tour 2.0? And if so, how are they going to do it? This starts off with, can you slow down Sarah Strong and AZ Fudd? No. Generally, no, I guess is a better answer. Of the two, AZ is more likely to have a quote-unquote off game just because her main weapon is the three-pointer. Sometimes your threes don't fall. She's looked less like herself in the tournament, but that can turn on a dime. Sarah Strong is the best player in women's college basketball. If she were eligible for the WNBA draft, I would take her number one this year. She would probably go number one if I'm a GM, and I should be, every year until going back to the A'ja Wilson draft. I would draft A'ja number one when she was coming out of college, but every other draft, if you set aside fan bases and what it can do for a team's bottom line, the business aspect of things, I'm taking Sarah Strong because a dominant two-way player is hard to come by. So, can you shut both of them down? Probably not. Your goal, if you are South Carolina, is just to make life as difficult for them as possible and hope AZ isn't hitting from three. The bigger goal, in my mind, is to make sure a third player does not go off, okay? Unfortunately, this is easier said than done when you look up and down UConn's roster. They have all kinds of talent. Just because that talent is playing in a certain role that doesn't make them the star doesn't mean that they aren't fully capable of going off against South Carolina, particularly freshman Blanca Quinones. She has been an absolute star in this tournament through this point. Really had a coming out party. She was Big East Freshman of the Year, so it's not a huge surprise. But you always hear about UConn's strength of schedule, all that stuff. Well, here we are against the best of the best, the biggest and brightest stage, and she is performing. Let's check out her stats. Boom. All right, there we go. So as you can see, 11 points per game on the year, 54 from the field, 40% from three. Played professionally in Italy since she was like 14. She can hoop. You know she can hoop. But these last few games here, starting with the first round game against UTSA, that's great. Smaller opponent. Syracuse, 7 for 9, 2 for 2 from 3, 18 points. North Carolina, 7-11 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3, 16 points. And then Notre Dame, she was the difference maker in that Notre Dame game to me. 4 for 8 from 3, 7 for 12 overall, 20 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. This is what's scary about UConn and why they have haunted women's basketball for 3 decades now. They just always find a way to reload. Like, this is watching Quinones in the tournament is how I felt watching Sarah Strong last year, where you realize, oh, they got another one coming right behind the ones they got. It happened earlier in the season for Strong, but it's the same feeling. And you're like, geez, Geno still got it. It doesn't matter that he looks like the old man from Up, still got it. So you've got to hold it to just Fudd and Strong offensively. See what you can do against the rest. Special, underline, bold, highlight, Blanca Quinones. Incredible tournament so far. Now, holding it to just Strong and Fudd, they can still beat you. They are talented enough to still beat you, but you have a chance. You have no chance if 3 players go off. It is what it is. Flipping it around to the other side, that's defensively the general what South Carolina has to do defensively as a team. Flipping it around to the other side, if you were drafting rosters from both teams, Strong and Fudd would probably be your first 2 picks. But after that, you would see a lot of Gamecocks, a lot of talent on that end, because like Geno reloads and recruits well, guess what Dawn Staley does? We've got this matchup between these all-time great coaches. Dawn Staley also recruits and reloads. I don't know why I said recruits that way, but I did. Joyce Edwards. We know she can score. Can she do it efficiently? And more importantly, is she doing the other things? The TCU game in the Elite Eight was the best all-around game, particularly the first half, was the best all-around half of basketball I have seen Joyce Edwards play. She was scoring in the flow of the offense. She was knocking down mid-range jumpers. She was playing solid post defense. She was crashing the boards, both ends, offensive and defensive glass. She was passing the ball. The ball wasn't just stopping when it got to her. This version of Joyce Edwards has to show up in this game if they're going to have a prayer. That sounds dramatic. If they're going to win the game, this version of Joyce Edwards has to show up. There's a gap between her and Sarah Strong. That's reality. It's fine. She has to minimize that gap as much as possible. And that's the way she does it. And if you look at what Strong does, she does everything. She'll do the little things. She's locked in on defense, on the ball, off the ball. She's rebounding. She's playmaking. She's doing all those little things and scoring within the flow of the offense. That's what Joyce has to do to minimize that gap between those two. Then, Raven Johnson. She's done a fantastic job this year of looking to score when she has to, being aggressive as a scorer offensively. We know she's a great playmaker, but in the past, sometimes hasn't looked for her own shot, which has kind of jammed up the offense a bit. She's been very good doing that this season and had a great tournament so far. 10 points per game, 4.3 assists to turnover ratio, 50%, knocking down 50% of her threes. If we get that Raven Johnson, who has been here multiple times, experienced, if that Raven Johnson shows up, along with the usual defense that she provides, that's another checkbox for South Carolina and their quest to win. Medina Okot, Mississippi State transfer. The one advantage South Carolina could have could be in the post, depending on which version of Medina we get. The one game that has kind of encapsulated the Medina Okot experience at South Carolina, the LSU game at LSU. The first half of that game, she looked, I mean, honestly, she was playing scared. She was playing soft. She was not locked in. She was getting pushed around. She wasn't having any real positive impact. Whatever Dawn said at halftime, she adjusted, came out in the second half, and wasn't scoring necessarily how we've seen her score at times, but wasn't getting pushed around anymore, finished with 17 rebounds. If that's the Medina Okot that the Gamecocks get, then that is another one of those little, we're just kind of edging closer to the win. I'm going to try not to say, that's funny. I started this trying not to say we when talking about the Gamecocks. I'm sure I've said it 47 times already. I told you, big Gamecock fan, this is what happens. I'm not ashamed. But we get Medina Okot, the good version of Medina Okot. Now we're creeping towards that. That also means stop bringing the ball down on rebounds. UConn is obviously well coached. If you bring the ball down against them, the ball will be going the other direction. Be strong with the ball. Be strong in the post. Stay out of foul trouble. Get you some rebounds. Take advantage of when you have a mismatch in the post and score. Boom. Then the player I've been yapping about since the tournament began, quickly becoming one of my favorite players to watch play, Agat Makir. She is on a Tournament Tessa-esque run, double figures in every NCAA tournament game, all 4 of them. She had 3 games in double figures before the NCAA tournament, averaging 15 points a game, 3 steals a game in the tournament. An incredible defender, very versatile. Her importance here is to continue playing with the confidence that she's been playing with in this tournament. And if Joyce is trying to close the gap between herself and Sarah Strong, Agat has to be closing that gap between herself and Blanca Quinones. And I think I wonder how much of a matchup directly between those two as far as defending each other we're going to see, because that's going to be very fun to watch. Like, which one of them has the biggest impact, I think, is going to play a major role in how this game goes. Speaking of Agat and her Tournament Tessa-esque run, Tessa Johnson. She got hot at the end of the TCU game. And that's a great sign for Dawn Staley and everyone to see. And she's been very good for the most part as she's moved into the starting lineup this year. But there are still stretches where you can't really tell she's out there. She's too talented to have those stretches. She can't have those stretches in any game, particularly this game. We have to know that Tessa Johnson is on the court whenever she's on the court. She's got to be knocking down threes. I'm sure she's going to have a very important defensive assignment. She's got to be locked in on that side of the ball, both on the ball and off the ball. Because there's been moments, I want to say, it might have been the Texas game, the SEC championship, where when she was off the ball, she was ball watching, and whoever she was defending was just getting open buckets because they were just cutting because she was turning her head, not paying attention. That just cannot happen against this team. So we're creeping closer and closer to Nia Latson. We need aggressive, efficient Tania Latson. We need Tania Latson getting to the free throw line. People think because she is a great scorer, led the nation in scoring last year at Florida State, and she's a guard, that The thought is that, well, she must be a great 3-point shooter. That's not really her game, but she can hit threes. And any three she hits, that is like icing on the Tanaya Latson cake. We've seen her lock in defensively. That LSU game at LSU, that comes to mind. She needs to do that as well. But mostly, we can't. There have been times when she'll catch the ball on the perimeter, and you can kind of see her thinking, like, is it my time to score, or are we running offense? What are we doing? And by the time you've answered that question and gone through all that thinking, you're done. She is much better. Everyone is much better. If she just goes, just go. Get in there. She sometimes also, like, you want her to get to the free throw line. Sometimes I think she's too focused on drawing contact to get to the free throw line. It's just got to come through the flow of whatever she's doing. She'll get in there against taller players and start double clutching and doing all this stuff. At this level, they're too big. That's not going to work. Then you're really just hoping that a referee is a good referee, and good luck living like that. So she's got to be aggressive, smart, not looking to draw the foul, but just getting to the free throw line through the flow of her offensive game. Okay. So all that stuff, the more of those boxes you check off, the closer you get to winning this game and returning to the national title game. As a team, if I'm in my mind thinking, okay, what does a game look like if South Carolina has won? Not only have they done these things that I've mentioned, they've hit at least 10 3-pointers. They've held UConn to single-digit 3-pointers. The final score is 75 at the most. The winning team has scored, South Carolina has scored at most 75 points. So UConn has not scored 75 points. And the big cause for concern I've seen with South Carolina this year, slow starts. You cannot get off to a slow start against UConn, because 9 times out of 10, they will bury you from there. And then 1 time out of 10, you might come back, but they're going to be so far ahead that they don't cough up the entire lead. So even against TCU, not the fastest start for South Carolina. You got to be, obviously you hope to be beating UConn at the end of 1, but you got to be within 3 possessions at worst, or else I don't know what to tell you. So we're in the Final Four. UConn hasn't been beaten in forever. Anybody can get got at this point. South Carolina is capable of doing everything I said. I didn't make up some sort of fairy tale scenario that they have to go above and beyond. We've seen them do the things I've talked about in games this year. They just haven't necessarily all done it in the same game. What's tricky is that they're going up against a team that generally doesn't let teams do all of these things in the same game. That's why they're UConn. But South Carolina can do it. I guess we maybe have seen South Carolina do it, just not against a top 10 opponent. And UConn is UConn. I mean, UConn last year is a good blueprint for South Carolina. They didn't necessarily have the best regular season, but it was still an elite regular season. And they regrouped after the Tennessee loss, the Texas loss. Maybe that was for South Carolina. That was the same thing for South Carolina. UConn kept improving. They were really sharp before the Final Four last year. But then, of course, they got to the Final Four and they just wrecked UCLA and South Carolina. South Carolina can do that this year. Like, I would be shocked to see another blowout at this point. I was shocked last year too, so I'm not Nostradamus, but I would be shocked to see that. I think this is going to be a much closer game than maybe we thought it would be when we saw the potential matchup on Selection Sunday, where UConn was coming off of the Big East Conference season, and you worry about, like I said, the strength of schedule, but then they're beating everybody by 50. And then South Carolina's coming off of a huge loss to Texas in the SEC title game. I think it's going to be much closer than that. In my bracket, I do have UConn winning. I, as a man of integrity, will stick with that, but I do feel more confident than I thought I would, and I will be yelling quite loudly for South Carolina. Shamelessly yelling, sweating, hoping not to scare my dog or wake up my child, because he'll probably be asleep for the most important parts of the game. So, okay. Moving on to what should be, at least on paper, a more even matchup. Another rematch from earlier this season, UCLA-Texas. Texas won that one 76-65 in November. Long time ago, so a grain of salt with that. I think Vegas has Texas as a 1.5-point favorite. If I were to rank these teams based on how they've played in the tournament, Texas would be number one. That would be my national championship favorite based off of what we've seen in the tournament. Then I would have South Carolina, UConn and South Carolina are probably interchangeable in there. And then UCLA would be number 4. Why is that? Why has Texas looked so good? Well, it all starts with Madison Booker. She models her game after Kevin Durant. You've heard it 47 times a game ever since she started playing. Where's his number? Plays at the same school. Both incredibly efficient. Both love the mid-range. She has been more fantastic than she gets credit for this season. I think in the past she's been, I don't want to say overhyped, but I think her efficiency has been overhyped at times in the past. This year, huge jump. Field goal percentage went from 42% to 46% to 52%. Let me, since I can't talk and work the internet at the same time, let's just pull up her stats and we'll just go to that screen. Here we go. Okay. So we look at these 2 seasons, what she's done. 46% from the field last year, 52% from the field this year. Increased her scoring by 3 points a game. But you get some non-conference fluff in there. So what's more impressive to me is first year in the SEC with Texas. In conference play, she was 41% from the field last year. This year, 49% from the field in SEC play. Scoring almost 4 points better. She's even better. Her efficient rivals that. Her efficiency rivals what she was at as a freshman in the Big 12. That is incredible. And when you dive even deeper to it, look at what I keep talking. Anytime we talk about Texas, the turning point is this Vandy loss right here, February 12th. Lost by 16. Just one of those games where you're either going to have you're going to turn it around, have a great season, or you do kind of what Tennessee did, and you just fall off a cliff. Texas as a team has turned it around, and she in particular has been lights out. 12 games since then, she's been at just under 60% from the field. She shoots a low volume of threes, but she's hit 55% of them, averaged 21 points, 7 rebounds, 3.4 assists, and about 2 steals per game since that Vandy loss. And even in the tournament, I mean, she dropped 40 against Oregon in the second round, 8 for 16 against Kentucky, 8 for 13 against Michigan. And they just ran all over Michigan. It was incredible to watch. So if she's playing like that, that's a national championship favorite, especially when you consider Rory Harmon has also taken her play up. She looked out of sorts at different points this season. There were a couple games where Vic benched her. Just kind of puzzling stuff. And for someone as experienced as she is, you're sitting there wondering, like, what is going on? Okay, but she's returned to form in the tournament since that Vandy game, like everyone else, honestly, but certainly in the tournament. In the 3 games against Power 4 opponents, almost 9 assists per game, 5 rebounds per game, 4 steals per game, and just 2.3 turnovers per game. Outside of just the stats, when you're watching the game, she's doing a much better job of setting the tone at both ends. When she's in an extension of Vic out on the court, I don't know how you beat them. So those are the 2 best players. I guess I might also throw in Jordan Lee. Those are the 2 most important players. Jordan Lee is a very important piece as well. She had a very tough game against Michigan. She was just 2 for 17. She's a great 2-way player. Just 2 for 17 against Michigan. 0 for 8 from 3. To me, this is scary because is she going to shoot 2 for 17 again? Full on John Starks. I would bet no. And the game that she did shoot 2 for 17, you couldn't tell she shot 2 for 17 because, again, they drilled Michigan. Like, that game was not even close. Ended up winning by 36. As a scorer, she has been their second best scorer since she had, for much of the season, but she had this little dip to begin SEC season. Auburn 1 for 7, meh. 3 for 11 against LSU when they lost. Just 3 for 6 against South Carolina when they lost. Couple of still didn't really turn it up until started getting to a groove the second half of the SEC season, particularly the SEC tournament is when she hit that level that she was at previously, and up until the Michigan game in the NCAA tournament, she was still killing. They obviously did not need her. I think they can't have a 2 for 17. This is me going out on a limb. If Jordan Lee shoots 2 for 17, that would be bad for Texas against UCLA. Quite the leap I've taken there. So they can't do that. But if Madison Booker is going to be this efficient, if Rory Harmon is going to be this effective in setting the tone on both ends, like, this is why Texas has looked so good. Why am I concerned about UCLA? Let's pull up their roster real quick. This is a team where 1 through 7, if you looked at each player in their slot, you look at talent, skill level, experience, This is the best team in the nation on paper. Now, the problem is that what's on paper doesn't always show up on the court for UCLA. But even with that being said, they only have the one loss to Texas back in November. So, not terrible. However, they seem to lack a killer instinct, and they will run out to an early lead and then kind of play down to the competition the rest of the way. You can't do that against a team like Texas, who is your talent peer and also has been stepping on people's necks when they get them down. Like, that's just going to be like, what are we doing? I don't think you can do it against anybody. That's always a red flag, because a lesser talented team can beat you. You especially can't do it against a team that is your talent peer and has shown themselves to have a killer instinct. Kind of along those same lines, like, this is going to be a gritty game. Texas is a gritty team. They want you to play a gritty game. Does UCLA have grit? Like, they have certainly been out-talenting teams, but again, this is not a team they can out-talent, even if they're the best team on the court if they're the best team on paper in this matchup. They can't out-talent Texas. Can they out-battle them if it's a real tough game, a physical game? Maybe the score is in the 60s, in the 70s, low 70s. Is UCLA going to be able to deal with that? This is the huge flashing neon question mark that I have for them. And I've tried to kind of separate what we saw from them in the Final Four against UConn last year, where I just think that team quit. I've tried not to hold that against them and tried to like acknowledge, like, a lot of their players have improved. They've added some great pieces as well. This is a better team than the team that faced UConn last year. But even, I keep going back to the games I've seen this year. Like, I don't know. I don't know. There was an interesting little story. It had to be Holly Rowe telling it, about how I think it was during the Oklahoma State game. She was telling it. I guess between the Big Ten tournament and when the NCAA tournament started, they were having practices, and the players were like, Coach Close, like, are you okay? I guess she was incredibly tense, being incredibly hard on them. And they're like, we don't need that. Like, just relax. Everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. And that's one of those things where we will judge it based on the result. And like, I'm judging it based on their past results. And I don't know how much it truly matters, but that's what sports is all about, just making up things and assigning value to them. If they win, or if they've won before, you look at them telling their coach to relax, as this is a laid-back, cool, calm, confident team. But if they don't win, then you're like, man, they should have listened to their coach. They were lackadaisical. They were unfocused. And with them never having won before, you want to lean that way, versus a Texas hasn't, like, UCLA, this team has struggled against top competition with most of these pieces. Texas has some big time wins. They haven't won a national title in 40 years. but they have some big time recent wins, both this year, last year. And they beat UConn when it was just Paige and Aaliyah Edwards. And Rory looked fantastic that game a couple years ago before she tore her ACL. And it means something when you're beating these teams with the name on the front of the jersey, even if this is clearly a better UConn team now. But it's good because a lot of teams lose games before the ball's even been thrown up for the tip when they're playing against these programs, because they look and they see Geno's over there or Dawn standing on the sideline over there, and they get intimidated because they know what that means. Like, who did they bring with them? They know what that means. And so they're intimidated and they lose. Texas has beaten these programs. So there's some confidence there. UCLA doesn't really have a signature win like that. They blew out South Carolina in that Thanksgiving tournament. But when was that? Was that last year? Everything's running together. This is what happens when you get old. Oh, no, it was at UCLA. That's right. So, yeah, it was 2024. So they've beaten South Carolina too. But this is where analysis just goes off the rails because it just feels different. I don't know what that means. It's probably not different. That's very funny. How many other people you know who talk about sports would get stuck on a thing like this to make sure that they were being consistent? It's just me. But you know what? For the sake of my own ego, I just don't know if UCLA, that's a huge signature win, but we're just going to have to move on because I've stumped myself with this. But they don't have, in the tournament at least, they have shown up less than Texas from a standpoint of Texas has had flaws, particularly offensively, where you run into South Carolina and you couldn't outscore them. Like your offense could not compete with them the past 2 years or whatever. UCLA has shown up with different flaws, but the thing that's really come through is they were just kind of intimidated. So with bringing it back to the Corey Close thing, first of all, is that why she was so tense to begin with? Is because she's worried? Like, what is she seeing that makes her so stressed out about this? And then for them, I don't think they have the win equity to really like, oh, we should just relax. Like, based on what? I don't know. But again, we'll have to see if that matters. That's similar to, I was just talking with Brett, who, if you've listened and watched this show before, he's been on here. We were talking about the World Baseball Classic, Team USA, incredibly boring team, only team without like a really cool celebration. Didn't look like they were having fun. They lost. So it's easy to say, well, they lost because they weren't having fun like the other teams were having fun. Is that true? I don't know, but I choose to believe it's true. If they had won, there would be people who say, well, see, they beat those other teams because they were so serious. I don't know. We're just making all this up as we go along, except for some of this analysis, but some of this feeling stuff we make up, but it's fun to make it up because it's not really making it up. Like, I believe what I'm saying to be true, but how do you prove it? It's just based off of, well, I got to fill in the gaps. Like, what's a legitimate, what was a contributing factor? Like, we can break down the games, but there had to be something else too. So how competitive is UCLA going to be with Texas? How gritty can they be with Texas? We're going to see what all that means. The on the court problems for UCLA, this is actual stuff. Anytime they get into like a little rut, They solve their problems by giving it to Lauren Betts. That's an incredible solution to have. However, Texas might be the only team in the country with a set of bigs that could disrupt that. Kyla Oldacre. I don't know. There's a societal thing we do when starting off like really young with girls, and as they grow up, where we seem to make them feel when they're tall, like they have to like kind of shrink themselves and be extra gentle. The biggest compliment I can give to Kyla Oldacre is she plays mean. I don't think she's a mean person. I have like everything I've heard. She's a nice person. She's perfectly fine. But she plays mean, and you want a big who can play mean, who like, I'm going to impose my physicality on you. We're going to battle on the boards. We're going to battle in the post. I'm not going to shrink. You're going to know that you're going to think I'm 6'9" out here. We are going to battle. You're going to feel it. Lauren Betts has been very good at imposing her physicality as well, but that's why you need someone like a Kyla Oldacre who can play mean, who can play strong. And there's all kinds of someone smarter than me. Like I would like to do a deep dive on like the societal pressures that does that, and like the implications of me even saying that. Because to me, you can play mean and still be like, we assign different labels to people, and it takes away femininity, and there's like also like racial aspects at play. But we're not going to do that today, the deep dive on that today. But it is interesting for me to think about. But like full on compliment, the way she plays is the way I think every big should play. And I respect it so much. Even if I hate to see her against South Carolina. I hate seeing her play, which is also another form of respect. But the way she plays is so tough. Brea Cunningham. She's been good all season, but the tournament, especially the past two games, it feels like anytime she puts the ball up at near the hoop, it's going in. Like, she's been great, and she's got the size to help defend Betts, and they both can score. You have to defend them. So Betts is going to have to defend, maybe stay at home and not help out and get some of the blocks that she gets. We'll see. So this is like the perfect team to negate the Lauren Betts factor as much as possible. Then on top of that, with the way Rory's been playing defense, with the way Jordan Lee plays defense, with just how Texas defends as a team, can the UCLA guards even get the ball to Betts in the first place? Because that's been where a lot of the struggles have taken place, where it's like, oh, we can't actually get the ball in the post. It's been improved over last season, but there will still be stretches where that's like, damn, just get her the ball. Like, I don't know. So that concerns me on the court for UCLA, along with my made up, are they focused or not? Feeling my vibe, the vibe check, I guess. In general, this is like a strength on strength matchup. Like UCLA, they love to move the ball. They're second in the nation in assists. Texas, they love to make you go one-on-one. They allow the fourth fewest assists per game. Both teams take and make a high percentage of 2-point shots. Both rebound well and also do a great job of keeping their opponents off the glass. The keys to the game Can your bigs stay out of foul trouble? Can you win the battle on the boards? Those are the two that stand out to me. UCLA, better 3-point shooting team. They shoot more of them. Neepkin's great 3-point shooter. Texas doesn't shoot a lot of them, but they have been making a high percentage of the ones they do shoot, particularly here recently. And that's really, when you're as good from two as they are, you just need a sprinkling of threes here and there just to make opposing defenders like stop and think. Just a little stop and think, because then that opens up everything else for everyone else in the mid-range and close to the basket, the stuff they really want to get to. If they're hitting threes on top of that, defenders start overthinking, and you get a little bit of extra time, and then it just starts to snowball. If I have to pick a winner, and I do, I, again, think Texas is the national championship favorite. I think they have more tools to disrupt what UCLA wants to do than vice versa. We've seen Texas win games that are rock fights. We've seen Texas win when they get out and just run teams to death. Again, when UCLA wins, it's a pretty win. Like, for the most part, it's a beautiful game that they've played. They're hitting threes, they're passing, doing everything that you're like, man, this is the type of basketball I want to watch. Can they win if it's a game like we've seen Texas win, or it's like, man, this is a battle. I can't stand it. Has this game lasted 3 days? Why are they still playing? What's going on? To me, that just doesn't feel like a UCLA brand of game that they can win. And Texas is really good at making you play that type of game, whether or not you want to. So I think we get Texas and UConn in the national title game. And from there, boy, whew, I obviously will adjust this when I see both games, because I could be wrong. In fact, the fact that I've picked UConn and Texas should make UConn and Texas fans a little bit nervous. So you're welcome. Oh, but if I had to pick between, I would stick with my UConn winning it all pick. But my confidence factor in that pick is getting lower. So we're almost at a coin flip between them just based on how they've looked so far. And again, I will change this after the Final Four games. I know people always love to come back when you make a prediction and where you were wrong. No one's ever come and tell me, you know what, that was a great prediction. You picked all these games. The games I get right, no one's ever like, you know what, this guy, what a handsome, charismatic, smart person he is. Like he also looks like a decade younger than what he is. You can tell he gets, like, his sleep quality is high. No one ever comes and says that. But let me get a game wrong. I got the UCLA UConn game really wrong last year, clearly. And people will still comment on the video about it. But they didn't comment, like, I didn't see the UConn fans there before the game took place. I don't know where all that confidence was. But much like I do with UCLA, where I'm playing the result to decide if they are taking things seriously enough, these people are playing the result to try to decide how smart I am. But I don't care about that. I'll come back and reevaluate after the games, and then we'll just have to hear from me how right I am. But I think they're going to be two great games. I am very happy that South Carolina game is first, because I need all of my energy for that game. Then I will hang on and battle it out for the Texas UCLA game. I get kind of sad as we get to the end here because I will miss it, but luckily we go right into WNBA season. We've got the expansion draft Friday leading us into the games, so that's going to be nice. But yeah, it's going to be a good one. I hope you are locked in. I'm hoping I can get a national championship game preview out as well. So we will see. But I thank you for watching, listening, rating, subscribing, reviewing, and sharing. Be on the lookout if I do get a national championship game preview out. But if not, don't worry. I will see you very soon.